Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our October 5th meeting of the Board of Education. Would you please stand and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Board members, may we have a motion to move out of executive session, please? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, board members, you've had a chance to take a look at the agenda. I would ask that we take a look at Roman numeral 6, letter B, number 6. I'd like to move that out of consent, move it to Roman numeral 4, letter A, number 8, and then move it back into consent agenda after we do a little discussion on that. Is it okay with that? All right, may we have a motion to accept the amended agenda?
So move. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries. All right, the Board of Education invites the public to comment on matters regarding the school district. The public comment section of the meeting is a time for the Board of Education to listen. And as a courtesy, we ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Comments naming specific personnel should be addressed privately or in writing to the board in order to protect an individual's rights, and matters that would infringe upon a student's privacy will not be addressed in this public forum. With that being said, is there anyone present who would like to address the board tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on. And let's say, I believe, yes, our Thomas rep. Yeah, Schrader's not here because the two girls are in sectional play for their tennis match.
Good evening, board members. We are now a month into the school year, and Thomas has already been very lively. I apologize in advance for any voice cracks. I was trying my best to make sure everyone in the gym today knew how much I wanted to win Spirit Week. Firstly, Thomas is very proud to be the first school this year to host Friday Morning Lights. Channel 13 WHAM News chooses one school each Friday to showcase their school spirit. And this year, they chose Thomas and the T-Birds, our new fan club, to start the season on September 8th. The T-Birds were an old fan club at Webster Thomas that haven't been active for the past few years. Through Mr. LaMonica, our new athletic director, and a few spirited students such as Will Johnson, Max Morrill, and Damian Wright, the T-Birds were brought back. Since then, they have been attending most athletic events and have been cheering their peers on. At the first showing in our gym at 6:30 a.m., we had between 400 and 500 students cheering on TV, while Mr. Weedor and other staff members served us pancakes and orange juice. By the final showing on the Thomas turf at 7:15, we estimated there to be over 1,200 students in the stands. Mr. Weedor and Mr. LaMonica were interviewed about our school and our athletic programs, and the marching band and cheer teams helped lead our fan sections and cheers, and all students and staff had an amazing time. This week was Spirit Week at Webster Thomas, and it was awesome. America Monday was a fan favorite brought back this year, followed by Film Theme Day on Tuesday. Wednesday was Biome Day, and today was Class Color Day. It is always really fun to see how creative people can get with their costumes for any of the days. And today, blocks were shortened to allow for the pep rally. It was overflowing with spirit and mostly friendly competition. All staff members, especially class advisors, put in so much work to make the pep rally great, and it is very appreciated. This year, we had a special event where the most spirited student of each grade was given the opportunity to throw a pie at the face of a staff member, and Mr. Gamina could give you some details on that one.
Did he get
Really
one?
good sport about that. Thank you.
Was it chocolate pie?
Shaving cream.
Oh, shaving cream.
It was good. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah. As always, Thomas has their Can Jam event during Spirit Week, where students compete to bring in the most non-perishable goods. This year, we also collected toiletries the entire week, which will all go to the victims of the recent hurricanes. As it just ended today, I don't have any specific numbers on how many items were collected, but we were packing them up for shipping, and the halls in the cafeteria were filled with bottles of water, canned foods, toothpaste, and just other toiletries, and it's a really great sight to see everyone's generosity. And the fall sports season not only had a great start, but has continued to have a great weather, as we have not had any rain cancellations thus far, and Mr. LaMonica is hoping to go for a perfect season. He, Mr. Callahan, and Mrs. Clark have been taking extra time to make sure our sports team have great leaders. In August, the three of them hosted a captain's training to show peer-elected captains what qualities all great leaders must show. They've been keeping up with them through check-ins at practice and also at a captain's breakfast they hosted before school last month. Tomorrow is the sports finale to Spirit Week at Thomas, with homecoming being full of events. It all starts at 4:30 when our boys soccer team kicks off against Greece Arcadia. After that, there will be several food trucks on the football practice field for fans and students to eat at. Then later, at 7 o'clock, our football team face off against Gates Chili. We welcome everyone to come and support our sports teams and to enjoy some great food. Thank you, and are there any questions?
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Right, and the same thing is happening at Schrader.
Yes.
So, all right, Lisa from WTA.
Keeping with the Spirit Week theme, I have my spirit wear on, because we did have Spirit Week at Schrader as well, and had our pep rally. WTA would like to share some more information on the Constitutional Convention, and I'm going to provide some more whys in terms of waste of tax dollars. You've heard on the news that town mayors are talking about opening up the Constitutional Convention because what they'd like to achieve is more funding towards their towns, which is admirable and makes sense, but this can be achieved through an amendment. Experts establish that the Constitutional Convention will cost hundreds of millions in tax dollars if it's opened up. Lawmakers can collect salaries and pension credits as elected officials and then as delegates simultaneously. The last time the Constitutional Convention took place, it cost taxpayers millions and accomplished nothing. Constitutional conventions don't have mandatory end dates. Delegates can keep meetings and taxpayers keep paying. So I'm urging people in our community to turn over their ballots and check no. And I'll share more next month. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see Stacy from PTSA, so we will move on. In trying to improve high school graduation rates, we may need to focus our attention on a milestone that comes far earlier, namely whether students can read well by the end of third grade. Reading is at the heart of all formal education. Reading helps to develop a young child's brain. Children who can read independently have improved linguistic skills in the form of a richer vocabulary, improved writing, better spelling, and more articulate oral communication. So tonight we'll be looking at our K-2 reading program known as Fundations. During the second part of our instructional report, we'll be looking at our secondary social studies program. Now, studying social studies helps students figure out their role in society as well as their place in history. And by studying the past, students learn how institutions, traditions, and ideals change as society modernizes. They also learn how cause and effect influences relationships between individuals, groups, and nations. So, Terry, why don't you introduce both Greg and Holly to the board, and we'll let you do your presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Suffoletto and Mr. Gumina and the entire Board of Education for the opportunity to share a little bit about the work being done in the Humanities Department, the work that was done last year and then the work we're working on this year. With me today is Holly McDonald, who's an instructional specialist who focuses on K-5, and Greg Alquist, who is a man who wears many hats. In addition to being a classroom teacher, he also does some work as an instructional specialist with social studies, and is a instructional leadership designer. Is that the title? Okay, that is the title. Who's been focusing a lot on leading our professional learning here in the district-wide, not just specific to humanities or social studies. And just a reminder for the board and our public, the Webster Humanities Department includes actually 6 departments, all with interesting acronyms, except for one. ELA, which is English Language Arts, and that's a K-12 focus. Literacy Across the Curriculum, or LAC, which is a program we offer in grades 6 and 7. And ENL, which is our English for English is a new language. That's for students who English is not their first language. Oftentimes it's their second or third, even fourth language. Library, which is a K-12 program. LOTE, which is languages other than English, which we start at 6th grade with our world language program, and students pick then a language starting in 7th, and they can go up through 12th grade and earn college credit. And then social studies, which is a K-12 program. And so when we think about the humanities, certainly we have talked, the board has talked a great deal about STEM and STEAM, the emphasis on science and math. And while science and math focus on the how, the humanities are really about the why, and what makes us uniquely human, and then ultimately what makes us humane. And for our students, when we think about the district's mission and vision, certainly the work that our students do and then our teachers to help our students reach there, we think the Humanities Department helps in many ways to achieve our mission and vision. And it's important to highlight the connections of our work to the Board of Education goals. And as a program in all 6 of those departments, we have been striving towards building that coherent curriculum, which is research-based, vertical progression, that balances between the art. I know that the board is so interested in supporting and helping out our teachers responding to individual students while connecting still to the science. What is good practice, and what do we know makes sense in our given fields? And wanted to just connect back to our professional learning. And certainly Greg and Holly will talk about that in their portions of the presentation. You have seen this, or I think Mr. Alquist spoke to this idea of professional learning being both a process and product connected to the vision. The compassionately connected process, the product of joyful engagement, and then the connection through always learning. And you'll hear both Holly and Greg speak to this in Webster. And so with that, actually, let me talk a little bit about some of the other work that the other departments are taking on. Library, pushed by our most recent bond vote, has been looking at redesigning their spaces. And while Thomas and Spry specifically will be getting new spaces, all 11 librarians, led by Larry Wall, will be looking at how can they best modernize their libraries in order to best meet the needs of our students. ELA, also under the direction of Larry Wall, has been working on research skills, continuing to say, what does it mean for our kids 6-12 around research? And then also thinking about our titles. What do we have students read, and how do we expand their world beyond the traditional authors and situations? How do we give kids lots of different options through literature? And then our LOTE, our Languages Other than English department, has been began a process to recognize our students who have multiple literacies and languages through the Seal of Biliteracy, which is a new honor that's being bestowed by New York State, where students can demonstrate proficiency both in English and in a second language. So both our ENL and our LOTE and our English departments will be working collaboratively to develop a process to highlight and recognize those students. And I do want to thank the leadership, certainly Holly and Rob, but also Larry Wall and Rob DeRose, who are teachers on special assignment, who are working with our teachers. Kate Hesla served in that role last year. And then our lead teachers and our principals and assistant principals who work directly with our departments. And with that, I will turn it over to Holly to talk about our foundational literacy.
Hi, good to see you all this evening. I'm Holly McDonald, Instructional Specialist for Humanities and Literacy. And tonight I'm going to share with you a little bit about our foundational skills program called Fundations. Wilson Fundations is a system that teaches critical foundational skills necessary for our little ones, our littlest learners, K2, to be efficient readers and writers. Fundations make learning to read fun, which is why it's called Fundations, using a multisensory approach while laying the groundwork for lifelong literacy. So our students in grades K2 are receiving that systematic program, and it includes phonological and phonemic awareness, which is really the knowledge that words are made up of small units of sound, and those words can be segmented into chunks, syllables. You'll also see sound mastery and phonics, and that's the study of letter-sound relationships, knowing that each individual letter of the alphabet has an individual sound, as well as, and sometimes multiple sounds, but also that letters chunked together like C and H, say ch. The Fundations program deliberately instructs irregular words also, because we know that not all words follow the generalizations we teach students. Those words like the and of. Can't sound those out. It also embeds frequent vocabulary instruction, which is a key scaffold to comprehension. And when teaching word structure, Fundations doesn't ignore fluency. It equally weights the process of decoding and discovering what unknown words are in a text, with the importance of reading them with expression at a steady rate and with accuracy. Fundations also includes the principles of writing composition, including spelling and handwriting. So the timeline has stretched out for the past 4 years. In 2014, it started with the team decision-making process where teachers were on the ground floor of deciding which program we thought would fit us best here in Webster. At the end of that school year, teachers in K and also 1 got a chance to have some training prior to implementing it in their classroom, which was really valuable. The following year, in 2015-16, K and 1 implemented the Fundations program. There were also teachers that were trained. We had 2 kindergarten teachers trained and 2 first grade teachers, I was one of those at the time, trained in the Foundational Skills program through Wilson. It was quite a rigorous program, actually, it's kind of like a graduate course in phonics, quite honestly. And I passed. It was a miracle. No. Lead teachers also participated, and about 4 times a year, the Wilson Company descended upon us and brought their instructional leaders and their literacy specialists, and they also had a chance to work with our lead teachers along with the trainees. Last year was the year that 2nd grade implemented Foundation, giving K and 1 their chance the year before, and grade 2 followed, so those students would have that vertical understanding. Level 3, there were 3 facilitators for level 2. We had a lot of in-class support, which is where I came in. I worked in all 2nd grade classrooms across the district last year, working with teachers, modeling for teachers, and giving support wherever anyone needed. And grade K2 lead teachers, kindergarten 1st and 2nd, also benefited from having the facilitators from Wilson come and work with them again. Last year, we also had the intervention teachers all trained in our district. This year, we're expanding the content and the knowledge to 3rd grade, supporting K2 PLCs and teachers and new to 2nd grade teachers in any grade level, and collaborating with the trainers that we've trained throughout the process. So foundation literacy skills really starts with the professional development. It was kind of critical that we had that pre, during, and now the post-professional development for teachers. Learning before you implement the program, having learning during your first year and 2 of implementation, and then this ongoing that we'll continue to do for teachers. It continues with that solid implementation at primary for K2, which really creates a direct impact on our intermediate grades, allowing our students to move from that learning to read to then reading to learn and putting those things in practice. This year, our 3rd graders are the first students that have had some foundational skills training with the Fundations program. Next year's 3rd grade students will be the first cohort that have had K, 1, and 2. We're really excited how this aligns with the board goals by building that greater consistency with curriculum and offering that to our learners. Fundations provides teachers with methods that support best practice and true explicit phonics instruction. This strengthens our district-wide capacity to create common learning experiences across all 7 elementary buildings, and creates that natural vertical structure from grades K and 2, giving all K2 teachers common language, common methods, and common means of instruction. So what are those next steps? Well, we're looking to maximize our in-house staff, the teachers that we've had trained, and work with them this year to see what kinds of supports teachers need as we continue on. We've already begun supporting those new teachers. We've already begun supporting any teacher new to second grade, since this is only their second year of implementation. I've already scheduled meetings with PLCs for third and a fourth grade team that are interested in learning more about this phonics learning. Over the summer, I worked with third grade teachers and a variety of intervention teachers and others who were interested in teachers working with students with English as a second language. And I shared with them the 6 syllable types, and it was kind of an eye-opener on learning these phonics methods of instruction. But our intention is not to take on a new program at 3rd and 4th or 5th grade. The intention is to give them the tools they need to support learners who may still be in the learning to read process, and or give them the same vocabulary that students are coming with and the same understanding, so that teachers continue that learning. Throughout this year, it's our goal to provide that needs-based professional development. What do teachers need? Since we've had some heavy in the first 3 years, what do you need now? I'd like to show you a quick video clip. It's very fun, actually. I love it. But we have students in this clip from kindergarten through 2nd grade. You'll see the littlest learners in kindergarten really working hard to get that pure articulation of the T sound. But you're going to hear that little "t" in there, and we'll work it out. You're going to see highlights from a 1st grade classroom, and it's really going to be kind of fun because there's an added bonus of some flexible seating that's used to engage the learners. And you'll also get to see what a beginning 2nd grader looks like, what writers look like in 2nd grade when they first enter our school in September.
And this video is all from this year? So this is right from the start of the school year, and no pressure on these teachers. But hey, by the way, would you mind if Mr. Conley came in to video our students? And so thank you to our teachers who were willing to showcase their kiddos.
That's right.
Mr. Conley.
Slide down to the grass line, slide back up to the plane line, down to the grass line, up to the plane line. W in what?
W in what?
WH whistle whoop.
WH whistle what?
TH thumb.
TH thumb.
Y-O-U-R. What's the word? Your.
And that's just a small snippet of what students do within one foundational skills lesson. It's multimodal, it's kinesthetic, you use all sorts of modalities within a lesson, highly engaging, and a ton of fun. So in summary, our journey with our Common Foundational Skills Literacy Program keeps us compassionately connected through that integral partnership with teachers, with them being a part of the adoption process and getting the training that they need. Joyfully engage, as you saw, that it was quite active and engaging just all on its own, but also responsive to student needs. And of course, always learning, where teachers and students are learning side by side. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Holly. And it is really exciting to see how far that program has come along and both in the Fundations component and then a social studies, really the thoughtful implementation. It really has been we recognize that the new programs and new curricula take multi-year to bring in, and it's not going from one thing to the next, right, which we often get caught up in education. And we're in this for the long haul, both from a Fundations and then we'll see with social studies. And when we talk about social studies, again, going back to this connection of the vision with our teachers in particular, our collaborative process, highly collaborative through all of our teams, the new focusing on that new curriculum and assessment, and really a visioning of what could it be. How do we take what we know is great instruction and exciting experiences for our kids, and how do we weave them into the day-to-day as a shift in terms of what social studies is really about, and then ultimately always learning, and our teachers saying, you know what, this is different, this is new for me. I think the introduction of the Chromebooks has been a great lever for us in terms of our instruction, and allows us to say, you know what, kids, we don't know, we're going to give this a shot, but we're always learning together, and our teachers have really embodied that. And the impetus for this work has been from our state in great partnership with local teachers throughout the state, including Greg, who helped spearhead a lot of this work, and a complete redesign of our social studies framework, what New York State says are the important parts of our local curriculum, and then ultimately, how do we respond? And we really asked our teachers to think differently about social studies. And then how do we assess our students differently? How do we have them demonstrate their knowledge in a new and different way, not the traditional way that many of us were assessed? And part of that was, I would say a small part, was driven by a redesign of our Global Studies Regents exam, which has long been a gatekeeper exam. And without getting into the nitty-gritty details, just know that it's really intended to be a much broader scope of process with a narrower content focus. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Ahlquist.
So thank you again for the chance to share with you this evening. So I'll start with on the big level, and then I'll lay out the roadmap of where we want to talk about social studies and kind of the journey that we've been on. So on the highest level here, you can see that we've kind of reimagined what social studies looks like at both a middle school and then as a high school. And really what we've tried to do is build a vertical program in social study that is connected from middle school to high school. And the curriculum sits right in the middle of that. But I want to draw your attention to the two arrows that sit underneath it, because I think this speaks to social studies. If you talk to any social studies teachers, the two things that surface about why do we do social studies, the two things that will immediately surface, number one, is that we want students to be able to connect the past to the present. They want to be able to understand, why does history matter today, and to be able to understand that. And the second thing that immediately emerges is the skills that we want, and more specifically, we want students to be critical consumers of information. And what actually doesn't emerge is probably what most of us think of when we think about social studies, and that is like the content. No social studies teacher at the end of 10th grade is going to say the most important thing is that all students know all Chinese dynasties in chronological order. That's just not the answer that we want, but we do want them to be able to look at a text and be able to identify what is the bias or what's the point of view that this author is bringing, or be able to identify fake news. Those are skills that are practiced in a social studies classroom and that are honed from 6th grade all the way through 12th grade. And so that is the foundational piece of what we're trying to build into this new social studies program, so that it's about those social studies practices. And then secondly, it's about those conceptual understanding rather than the small details of history and the minutia. And then ultimately what happens out of that is that Jeopardy style multiple choice trivia that all of us remember for social studies. Now what's taken center stage is a larger understanding about what are these enduring understandings, these issues that span over time and that we can see and give students the opportunity to make those connections between the past and the present. So here's what we want to do. We want to look at both middle school and high school, give you a quick snapshot of what's happening in each of them, and then honestly, what we'll do is kind of do a small case study. We'll look at a little bit at 7th grade, and then we'll also look at 9th grade as kind of examples of what's happening in middle school and high school. And then to be even more kind of clear about where we're going to do an overview in middle school and high school, and then also hone in and just give you one example of what these shifts in assessment actually look like. So middle school and high school overview, and then kind of in interspersed in the midst of that, we also are going to share a little snips of classroom and have a teacher share a little bit of perspective. 7th grade teacher, Lisa, who is just outstanding, and looking forward to having her voice kind of shape some of this as well. So here is the big picture for our middle school work. And you can see that it does span back to 2014. And what we tried to do here is kind of just show the focus points for each year. Obviously, we were working on all 6, 7, and 8. Those were work, but we actually concentrated and focused our efforts on one grade level at a time. And it just kind of started really nicely with 8th grade, which was a cohort of teachers that went on a learning in Monroe BOCES. And it was an opportunity to reimagine their final exam. So rather than this traditional assessment with multiple choice and essay, as you might imagine, it was an opportunity to think about assessment outside of the box and without those traditional parameters that have kind of confined thinking. And what that emerged was a current events project where students picked an event that captured their interest, and then they researched it and found the connections. This became a year-long project that was the final assessment of their learning. It was just a different way to approach social studies in 8th grade, and that was kind of our launching point. And then what we began to focus on grade 6 and grade 7, and the other thing that I want to focus on is that in each case there was a learning that happened. Just gave you the quick snapshot with 8. I can give you the quick snapshot with 7 as it identifies. We actually went with both 7th and 8th, and we even worked it and expanded it over the summer. But what we did is we actually made a local look at history. Started actually this past summer. We looked at Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony and looked at their visions, not just of equality, which is so important, but we narrowed the focus and looked at economic and educational equality. And then we asked the question, are we there yet? Which was a really interesting question. And of course, the immediate answer, well, they seem to have achieved their goals. But then we looked at 2 other case studies. One, we looked at the Rochester race riots and asked that question, are we there yet in economic and educational equality? And then we looked at the state of our own educational system and some of the inequalities that looks at when we looked at the broader picture of Monroe County. And we actually went downtown and looked at the resources, and there's a Susan B. Anthony exhibit that was in the downtown Rochester library, and we took advantage of local resources. And then actually at the end of that time, we actually took a trip to Mount Hope Cemetery and actually began a conversation with the past. We had little postcards, and teachers could actually write notes and leave it on the gravesite to kind of have this conversation with the past, to kind of make those connections. So to have teachers have this experience, and again, just to think outside the box. And we had that kind of a learning experience that kind of became a center point, and then we worked as teams. I had the privilege of working with those high-functioning teams and pulling in a couple of different settings. Sometimes we pulled Willink and Spry together. Sometimes it meant kind of having building-level conversations, and then also it just meant me kind of walking in and working with teachers one-on-one, and actually, frankly, teaching middle school, which was a great opportunity over these last couple of years to work side by side with some amazing colleagues and have the chance to work with middle schoolers, something I swore off that I was never going to do. But that is the process. There was a learning that happened, then there was support that happened cross districts, but also by building, and then also with individual, and then that kind of just grew the program. And the other thing that you'll notice here is that there was the other shift that happened in every grade level was a reimagining of that final assessment. And I want to give you just a snapshot of what that kind of looks like here in just a minute. But I want to set this clip up for you. And we asked Lisa, who's a 7th grade teacher, Lisa Hofstetter, who's a 7th grade teacher at Willink, and we asked her, what did you most enjoy about this entire process? And I think her words will speak quite well here.
I think the Social Studies 7 changes provide students with the support and the framework they need to be critical thinkers and 21st century global citizens. I used to teach high school, and I think it's very exciting that the framework and the changes provides the support for students of all ages and all ability levels to meet our expectations and exceed the expectations of these changes.
What I love about Lisa's words is, if you notice, what does she like the most? It's about the impact on students, right? That she highlights exactly what we want for students, that they can become 21st century thinkers, that they can become global citizens, and that is the end game. And I love the way that she captured that. That is reflected in these assessments, and that's the next picture that we have up here for you. And on the left, this is actually a 6th grade snapshot for you. But on the left, this is kind of a more traditional, you kind of name the leader, and then you kind of give some details about that leader, or you've got these kind of vocabulary, kind of identification and matching, and that kind of feels familiar to me from when I was a student in social studies. But look at what it looks like on the right. This is a 6th grade assessment, and what the students are being asked to do is they pick 2 out of those 3 images, and then they talk about what was life like before that invention, and then what was life like after that invention. And that's a very different task. And let me highlight one element of it. Rather than a multiple choice or vocabulary test that catches in students with what they don't know, we're asking them to pick 2 of these, and we want to catch students in what they do know. And so the other really interesting thing is that even that image in the middle, which could be interpreted as some students might latch on to the fact that it's a wheel. Some students might actually interpret as a chariot. Some people might as a wagon, and then kind of talk about before and after. And all 3 of those interpretations would receive credit. And so what we're trying to do is have students be critical consumers of that information to make a claim and then support it with evidence, but also we're targeting that skill of change in continuity. What did it look like before, and then what did it look like after? And that's a very different task, and that's what 6th graders are doing. And I just think it's a great representative snapshot of some of the work that's happened with students, and then also this work, the way that teachers have set those students up for success. Let's capture Lisa's voice one more time, because I think she's going to be able to respond to this and talk about how students are actually responding to this challenge, to this new design, and to these new tasks that are in front of them.
This lesson that we did today served as an introduction to the historical thinking that they need for these social studies changes, and then I always reflect at the end of the year and think about how much they have grown, and I always feel very excited about it because we can really support all of their needs as they develop the skills throughout the year required for historical thinking and critical thinking. So I just feel like they've responded really well. It's tough at first, but they persevere and keep working at it.
I'm going to have to pay her for that line, because there is your essential skill tie-in, right? That it couldn't be more clearly stated. That really what she's talking about, and I so appreciate this, there is this great growth that happens from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And when you have assessments that measure that, it's hard up front, but then you can actually catch them in what they know. And the word skills is used multiple times because that's what we want for students. But let's turn our attention to high school as well here, and kind of take that big, broad picture with high school, and similarly to what we did with middle school. But what you'll notice here is that the timeline is a little bit more stretched out here, mainly because the changes are slower in kind of coming to the high school. Put slightly differently, every middle school student is going to take a new global Regents exam, whereas they're still taking a more traditional global and U.S. exam for the next couple of years. But what we have targeted is 9th grade. And we have undergone the same type of process where there's a learning experience, but then we are supporting it with cross-district work in smaller teams. And I've got to tell you this about the 9th grade team. It is just when you sit a group of 9th graders, 9th grade teachers around who have been teaching global history for numerous years, and you ask the question, how do we create a course that you love to teach and that students love to learn? And that became the basis of our reimagining of 9th grade, because no longer is 9th grade content actually tied to the Global Regents exam. And so there was this freedom to reimagine, to rethink, and re-envision what 9th grade social studies could be. And what was absolutely, I think for me, what I was most proud of was the unanimous consensus that emerged. It didn't even have to be consensus. There was a unanimous voice about the way that they wanted to, and it's all of these same things about skills and about practical connections. And I want to illustrate this in 2 quick ways. One of the things that can kill students very early in the year is by looking at every single river valley civilization, with Mesopotamia and China and India and Egypt, and so you're already bored with what I'm talking about. But what we did is, and I think this is illustrative of the approach, rather than do every single one, these teachers said, let's teach one in greater depth, and let's assess if they can transfer that knowledge to a different river valley. And so it allowed for a deeper exploration of a concept that could then be applied in other places and in other times. And the second quick snapshot that I want to share with you is that everybody had taught belief systems in so many different ways at different points in the year, and they made this group commitment to teach all of the belief systems in the same unit at the same time with one big change. They said, how are we going to get students interested in this? And the answer was, rather than just teaching about the belief system in isolation, let's connect it to current events. And in fact, most teachers actually led with the current event. And then the study of that belief system became much more relevant. It became more personal, and it became timely connected, so that the why are we studying this actually had an answer immediately. So again, that connecting the past to the present, and it's actually hard to even capture just kind of how incredible that moment was when everyone kind of agreed, this is what we need to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And that is for me, that was the compassionate connections. And I've worked with other teachers in other contexts and had conversations with other districts, and that kind of unanimous consent just does not happen. And I think that's a real credit to the teachers that we have teaching these courses. The second thing that we want to take a quick look at is actually how this actually plays out in a quick assessment. So here on the left is your traditional Regents exam multiple choice question on Mesopotamia. But on the right-hand side is the way that we reimagined our 9th grade final. Gone is the multiple choice and the essay and the traditional format, and what these 9th grade teachers created was a project and a portfolio that students put together that was based on sources, and they picked an enduring issue. Every student picked their own enduring issue. They had a couple to choose from, and then they picked documents from the course, a couple from the first half of the course, a couple from the second half, and then they talked about why the documents that they selected connected to the issue that they had selected. And it's just a very, very different task than this kind of assessment on the left-hand side. It's about skills, it's about conceptual understanding, and it's about making connections from the past to the present. And it is that also reflection that I want to capture one more time here with Lisa, as she kind of summarizes all of these changes and kind of what this has meant in social studies.
The short answer questions have been a project of our Social Studies 7 PLC since last school year. So we started working and developing short answer question sets that align to the new Regents exams in our PLC meetings at our schools, and then we would share together. So it was cross-district with 7th grade teachers from Willing and Spry. And then we developed a final exam that really gets at the growth that students need in order to be successful at this. So it's basically like the long-term learning target.
So I love the way that she has described this process and then this long-term learning target, that what's happening in 7th grade is actually going to affect and impact the way that students are understanding what's happening in 9th grade and then ultimately in 10th grade with this new exam. And what she's articulated here, and this is what we've tried to present here, is that there's a very different product on the back end of what's happened in social studies in this reimagining process. But it's also about the compassionately connected process, the way that these teachers have gone about it, that is equally as impressive to me as the product is the way that that's actually happening. And I think ultimately, just as Holly articulated and then said so well, that both students and teachers are really pressing forward, that this is the part that I think that I step back in just amazement, that there is incredible learning that's happening. And so we've targeted this in middle school and high school, but that's not the end of the story. And Terry's going to pick up with kind of our final pieces and where this is going.
All right, thanks, Greg. And our next steps is to take this work from 9th grade and transition into 10th grade. One of the things that we've been emphasizing, certainly Greg and I, is that history and social studies is not a settled science. It's often been taught that way, as if this is the one answer. And I think Greg highlighted that 6th grade example of it could have been a chariot, it could have been the wheel. Having kids think differently. What do social scientists do? They look at evidence and they interpret it. And the other piece is going to evidence. That if you're going to make a claim, you need to be able to support it with evidence. And we know in this current political climate that some of us don't let facts get in the way. But for our kids, facts have to get in the way. If you're going to make a claim, you need to be able to provide it through evidence in documentation. And then moving this up into 11th and 12th grade, we anticipate there'll be a redesigned 11th grade assessment, and then also reimagining our 12th grade. What do we want kids as they walk across that stage? What are those skills that they need to have? What are those critical understandings that they will need as they become productive citizens and learners moving forward? And so from J. Irwin Miller, the calling of the humanities is to make us truly human in the best sense of the word. And certainly our students demonstrate that on a day-to-day basis. Our teachers demonstrate that on a day-to-day basis. And we're excited for the work that we have already accomplished. And we look forward to our challenges moving forward. And with that, I will turn over to the board for questions.
Thank you. Sue, can we start with you?
Actually, I had several questions to start, and you answered them all during the presentation.
Okay,
So,
great.
Thank you very much. It was a great job, very interesting, and it's great to see all the hard work that's going on and the new things that our kids get to experience.
Great. Thank you.
Linda.
Also, you answered all my questions pretty much. Just through the Fundations, will it be the NWEA that we look to see in 3rd grade how the kids are doing? And then after the kids that are in 2nd grade, so next year we'll look at that and kind of reassess how things are going. Is that what the plan is?
That is a great question, and yes.
Okay.
NWA is one data point. Fundations also has embedded assessments at each unit, and so I know our teams at each building have been looking at that. And then for us as a system to be able to take a step back and see how has this impacted? Because it's not just about, it's fun and the owl is cute and all that, but ultimately is it making a difference for our kids? And you see the sort of reading skills that they will need when they get into ELA and social studies and even the sciences. And so it is important to make sure that they're set up for their future success.
It's great. And it's neat because we have technology, but this is not using technology. So it really is fun to see. So
That's intentional, because
that is one of the big questions of teachers, like, where's the gadgets? Where's the tools? Where's the apps?
Right.
And really it's about having that kinesthetic, that tactile touch, feel, move, and do it in multiple ways to impact our little learners. Teachers are certainly making extensions and connections to independent work time, using lots of different things with the iPads to support this work also. As a matter of fact, this summer I worked with teams of teachers using Seesaw apps and QR codes to have some other forms of practice using the skills they use in Fundations.
Thank you. It's wonderful. And it's so nice to see social studies exciting and not just learning a timeline and having to regurgitate. So I thank you for that. It's very exciting. So I appreciate all the hard work.
Jan?
Just a couple questions. Holly, I know our intervention staff has been trained, is that correct?
Yes.
And are they going into the classrooms, or are they working with small groups out of the classrooms, or a combination?
I would say a combination. It would really depend on what the student need was.
Because obviously, you know, not everyone, even at kindergarten, will be able to pick up on the sounds at the same rate. And it's a 30-minute a day.
Yes.
Right, I've been in kindergarten, so I was there for. What did we give up to put in this 30 minutes, you know?
I would say it's more of a reimagining of the work that you already did.
Okay.
And it was putting it into, I'm trying to look for the exact words, but it's all the parts that, as a primary teacher myself, I did all of these things either in an isolated time in the day or throughout the day or when I'm working in small groups with children. And this gives it a little bit of a tighter focus, gives a common vocabulary from teacher to teacher across grade level, and also in that vertical piece. So when you're coming from kindergarten to first grade to second grade, your teachers are all talking about digraphs.
Right.
They're all saying two letters that make one sound, instead of the fun, different, catchy ways that we might find ourselves imagining for children. So kids are hearing that consistent language and doing certain routines, actually, not unlike our math expressions, where there's certain routines that they do each day that are familiar from K to 1 to 2 to reinforce those skills.
But it's probably still part of the ELA block.
Absolutely.
We didn't expand that block,
No.
did we? So
No.
we just regrouped it.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Greg, I just want to say how exciting this is to see this social studies, because one thought I've always had about fill in the answer or multiple choices, we've lost the opportunity to see how much that child really knows. But when you ask them to explain, you get closer to what they really know inside. So that's wonderful. So
And just to add for that, I think you know, for social studies and longtime social studies teachers, it's not that we wanted to teach boring. I think in part it was how we were assessed. It was just, yeah. And so I just want to be careful to make it, you know, that our teachers have always tried to make it as exciting as they could. Part of it is there's an efficiency. You know, in high school teachers, you have 120 kids. How do I quickly assess where they're at? And I think our system at times is focused more on how do we assess kids through multiple choice. And I think we've said to teachers, let go of that, and we're giving you that permission.
And that's how the Regents operated too. So,
Yes.
you know, and often we modeled what we did after, you know, what the state was doing, so.
For sure.
Have we collected enough data from the Fundations to have a feeling? Are we running ahead of where we were, or are we not at that point?
I think we're probably not at that point. I think anecdotally, if you ask our teachers, almost to a person, what they will say is they're shocked at what the kids come in with, particularly K to 1, 1 to 2. And you saw it. You saw it in our classrooms. This is beginning of the year, and they knew the routines. They knew the language. And even our kindergartners picking up very quickly. And so I think anecdotally, I think it will be exciting to look at the data. I think it's a little bit early just yet. And we don't want to get caught up in drilling too close yet.
Right.
I think we want to make sure that it's fully established.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Holly, when we buy a program like Fundations, those manipulatives that we were seeing in that classroom being used, are those notebooks with the letters being placed, that whole package comes, and is that, how reusable is that kind of package?
From year to year, mostly.
Yeah, and there are workbooks that are bought every year.
That the kids are writing
Yep,
in?
yes,
Okay.
Yep. And then a lot of like the manipulatives, the magnets are reused year after year. And then every year we have to buy a few and we put out to the teachers. And that's what we've done. We've taken that responsibility from the building. So at a district level, we use our collective purchasing power. And then we distribute out to the buildings because the building principals and assistant principals have so much on their plate, so that Holly and I and our office take care of that.
Gotcha. Greg, one question, the middle school assessment slide that we were seeing with the cart.
Yeah.
As an instructor, when I know that cart's going to be on the final exam, there is a tendency for me to talk about the value of carts. So how do your instructors avoid that problem? How do you get to the point where a child is getting the opportunity to show you they're stretching their knowledge and can translate? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think at least one answer is I think you have to make a deliberate attempt not to show that image in class, right? And so you do show other images, perhaps, and maybe those three examples that I gave of possibilities would be something that would have been discussed. But I think it's a fair point. But I think what you want to do is provide students with enough opportunities to work with multiple sources of evidence in several different ways, and maybe they're reading about it, maybe they're looking at some pictures, maybe they're looking at some archaeological evidence, or maybe they're reading about the achievements of them. So there's multiple ways that they're having opportunities to learn about these particular things, but then you're choosing something on the back end that gives students an opportunity to interpret it individually, but then tap into some of the other learning that happened. And I have great confidence that no one's showing that particular image before. But certainly if you did some exercise on the wheel and had some kind of reading or some kind of text or other artifact about wheels that were there, then can the student transfer that knowledge, what they saw in that classroom context, and then can they demonstrate it in an assessment context?
And I think it's also shifting the responsibility and in a system that I think that it's come from the leadership of Mr. Gomina and the board, that when we look at our assessments, it's not about how did that individual teacher do, it's about how did those kids do. And so it's not, oh my gosh, I feel this pressure, I've got to show this cart so that our kids do better, so our data looks better. It's truly about, how do I know, did my kids understand this? And then our conversations are more about that than do we get 96% passing or 95% passing? And gosh, we have to talk more about carts next year.
And I think the only other thing too to say is that identifying the image is one very, very small part of it. That is to say, you also have to talk about what was life like before that invention and what was life like after. So actually what the student is writing is, yes, it's dependent on being able to decode and identify what that one of those three images is, but then it's really getting at that understanding to can they articulate what happened before and after. The answer is not just identify two of those three images, it's actually using the skill to be able to articulate how the impact.
Right, but as an instructor, I'm not just going to put a picture of the cart up there. I'm certainly going to talk about how that cart helped the farmer and how that cart helped the... Okay, it's an interesting challenge. Thank you. I appreciate the passion that all three of you bring, but especially these two characters. Thank you.
Me too.
Yeah.
Thank you for this work. It's very impressive, and it's very interesting to see how thorough you've been in opening up the entire process and going through 6 through 12, and to see where the current work leads you. Also appreciate seeing the alignment with the goals, and it just helps us be so assured that what we're doing aligns with what we believe is important every day. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll echo the thought that your enthusiasm is contagious, but I do have some questions. From my experience with the Wilson program, I know it emphasizes the skills. You showed them the phonics, the phonemic, the fluency. And I know it includes some comprehension strategies. but I feel the program must be combined with a strong core literature-based program for an integrated and very comprehensive approach to reading. So if my observations are correct, how are we getting at this integrated approach?
Exactly. We still believe in the balanced approach to literacy. We didn't take this one program or hand teachers a box and say, throw it all out. They're still doing guided practice with their young learners, working in small groups, doing large group interactive components with reading and writing. So Lucy Calkins' Writer's Workshop, things that you've heard for guided reading, also working with the domains and giving some listening and speaking standards. All those things are still a part of the package. Teachers always taught phonics along with their curriculum. We just didn't all do it the same way. This is giving us a means to do it and give those common experiences for all of our elementary students.
Jen and I remember when there were about 11 different ways.
Yeah.
Well, earlier I mentioned that a metric was being able to read well by third grade. So if the board were to establish this, a metric, let's say 98% of our students will be reading at grade level by third grade, can we reach that?
I think anything's achievable,
Yeah.
honestly. We
Yeah.
work hard, students work hard. We can get there's going to be students who need additional supports, and we have those in place.
Hear that, board? Greg, I'm going to almost give you back your question. What will success look like after the concept approach as opposed to the chronological approach?
So let me just qualify the question just a little bit, right? You're almost suggesting, I know you're not, but I think it would be easy to see chronological versus conceptual as two binary options, right? I think the other thing to say is just because we have these conceptual understandings woven throughout, chronology still matters. That being said, I think at the end of the day, a conceptual understanding should be able to understand and look back at the past, be able to connect it, and then when current events are happening, I have a lens. I have an understanding about ways that perhaps other people have dealt with this in the past that would give me some insight into what might be a path forward or what were other paths that were successful or unsuccessful in the past that might actually inform what actions might be taken moving forward. I think ultimately it results in students who are active and engaged citizens that are taking informed action, that they're citizens that are participating in the democracy, and that are participating in conversations and becoming productive citizens to make good change in the world. At the end of the day, a good social studies student should be a good citizen.
And is the state doing anything about that?
Well, I mean, one of the ways to look at that is that I like the reimagining of the Regents exam that has provided this opportunity for us to reimagine putting enduring issues front and center as one of the essays on the new Global 10 exam. Now puts enduring issues, and then connections to the present, puts it front and center. And if you're going to assess it, then it's going to be taught. I guess that's one way of looking that the state has kind of reimagined that traditional DBQ and thematic essay and replaced it with a thematic essay. And the other thing I think that I would say is that all parts of this new exam, without getting into the weeds, rely on sources. Even the multiple choice questions that are there are based on a stimulus, meaning a graph, a map, a chart, a primary source, a secondary source, some kind of a reading. And I think that's an incredibly smart and bold move because that's what we want for students. We want them to be able to pick up a map or pick up a newspaper and be able to interpret the chart, or to be able to pick up the Wall Street Journal and be able to intelligently decode and understand. I think the state putting evidence and sources front and center on the exam is it gives us on the ground level instructional and curriculum design leverage that we can align and prepare students for it, so that in essence the state is creating an exam that might actually have some transfer value long-term for students.
Okay, I think we'll look forward to seeing that in the future. And finally, you'd mentioned how you want to match belief systems to current events. So how do we have a very thoughtful and respectful discourse in an era of political and social and cultural conflict?
It's not a loaded question at all. I actually think that is something that happens in social studies classrooms regularly with the incredible colleagues that I have, and I think part of my answer would be this. One of the foundational elements of social studies is understanding and honoring multiple perspectives. So we have students wrestling with multiple sources. And then the way that translates in the classroom is that the classroom becomes a place where multiple voices and multiple perspectives are honored and celebrated. And will there be disagreement, and will there be different interpretations of the same evidence? Absolutely. And what do we want to do? We want to put multiple perspectives in front of students so that they have to grapple with the differences, and the differences of interpretation, the differences in how somebody reads a certain source or interprets an event that happens. Without giving a long story, I want to say, I'll share just a quick anecdote in response to. Right after the election, there were lots of questions, and when students walked into my classroom, we could put the boundaries around the question and the conversation, and I simply said, I just want to understand why we think these events have unfolded the way they have. And I said, but what I don't want to have happen is people putting down other people. And I'll tell you what unfolded in that classroom was the most thoughtful and rich discussion about current events that I had seen and that I was actually a part of. And it was happening with sophomores. Because they honored that. They liked that boundary. They actually appreciated it. And they listened to each other. They didn't agree. There were multiple perspectives in that classroom, but they honored each other's voice. They listened really carefully, and then they thoughtfully responded. And I think that anecdote is a microcosm of what's actually happening in the classrooms of my social studies colleagues.
Maybe we can have you teach our adult world. But whatever. Thank you very much. It was very, very good report. Board members, we'd like to have a motion to accept this report, please. Thank you. A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stacy, I saw you walk in. I'm sorry we didn't catch you right away. Would you like to give a PTSA report?
This is my second grader. This is what happens when you have 3 different kids in 3 different schools. We've got to compromise, huh? Thank you for letting us come. Allison couldn't be here tonight, but we wanted to kind of give you guys just an update what Central's been doing. Let's see. First thing is Allison and I have been participating in the building committee meetings. We've been trying to go to each of the elementary schools, and we're seeing, make sure that's me, we're seeing firsthand all the amazing things that each school is doing, and we are truly impressed. The ideas, the fundraising, everything, the different things they have going on. We have 3 more, I think, to go on in October, and then we plan to make rounds again, and then Allison and I are going to switch hats, because we kind of broke apart. She was doing certain schools and I was, so we'll switch that around the next couple times. One of our next focuses is the secondary schools. We're trying to see where the need is there and how do we get more engagement. So that's something we're just starting to look at and seeing what's going on. Let's see, Dave Swinson came to our meeting this week, which was great, and we talked about the fingerprinting and how it's going to affect all of our volunteers. The one thing we did discuss at the central meeting is we didn't want some of our volunteers to have to pay the upfront costs. $99 is a big cost for some people. So what we've decided to do is we voted on it that Central is going to pay the upfront cost of the $99, and then the district will reimburse us. So then none of our families will have that put on them. Let's see, we did Meet the Candidates night this week, was very successful. Dorothy Petrie was our moderator, and it went great. We had people asking questions, or we had people submitting questions, and we were very happy. It was very positive, and we were excited with the students we saw there. It was wonderful. The high school students came and kind of got to see a little bit of stuff what's going on, and that was what we wanted to do. A couple of the last things is we're having a prescription drug drop-off that's going to be provided to the public. It's being put on by PTSA and WEN. I'm sure it's kind of started to get all over social media, but it's really neat. People can bring their prescription drugs that are expired, sitting in their cabinets and stuff. And so the drop-off is going to be Saturday, October 28th at the wastewater treatment plant on Phillips Road. And if people bring in their medications to drop off, Mark's Pizzeria is providing a coupon for a free slice of pizza.
Ooh, yummy.
Okay, so, sorry. That is something very positive. And lastly, we are super, super excited. Our membership numbers, our goal was 1,200, and so far we are at 820 as of today. So we are very excited by this, and we keep coming up brainstorming new ideas and everything to keep that going, but everybody is thrilled. So I think that's it.
Stacy, before you leave.
Yeah.
Hey, Tana, stand up, get right next to your mom. No, I'm serious. Stand up.
He's saying stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Now look right at the television. This way you can see yourself. Isn't that cool? That's the best part about this job.
Next time I'm going to do the carpooling for the high school dance, and we'll have Daddy come with you, huh?
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you guys very much.
This will be the second time I'm going to be on TV.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, Carm, you've got to follow that.
Never follow kids or pets. So as I have walked the halls of Schrader and Thomas the past few days during their Spirit Week, I am reminded once again of how truly thankful I am for our teachers and our students. Not only do they make our high schools enjoyable places to be, they make them incredible places to grow and learn. In fact, both of our high schools were recently recognized as two of the top places to grow and learn when they were designated reward schools by the New York State Education Department. The State Education Department identified 185 high-achieving and high-progress schools that demonstrated either high academic achievement or the most progress with closing the achievement gaps. Principals Glenn Weedor and Paul Benz shared that being named a reward school is not only an honor, but also a reflection of the outstanding support that we receive from our families and community. Both schools receive certificates that celebrate success in supporting educational excellence and helping students achieve college and career-ready standards. All of us in the district salute our two high schools for their ongoing commitment to excellence, and I can also share from personal experience that these school families, students and teachers and parents, exemplify the district's vision of compassionately connected, joyfully engaged, and always learning. So congratulations to the Thomas and Schrader families. Now, speaking of Spirit Week, you already know that both high schools have been celebrating homecoming all week. We have football games tomorrow night, and there's sporting events going on tonight as well, and I think there's a couple of sporting events going on before the nighttime football games tomorrow. And I also plan on Saturday being with our One Webster marching band for their autumn fanfare. And it is Saturday evening. Gates open at 5:30. The show starts at 7 o'clock. Tickets are $6 in advance at Hagedorn's or $8 at the gate. District students and staff's tickets are only $2 with your ID. So it's Saturday night. It's one of my favorite nights of the year, and our marching band has had 4 competitions, and they've come home with 4 first-place trophies so far this year. It's been pretty amazing. And if you're hungry, there's a mini food truck rodeo again this year. So be sure to visit our website, websterschools.org, if you'd like more information. And finally, a brief schedule reminder for our families. There's no school tomorrow due to My Day, and no school on Monday in honor of Columbus Day. So 2 Italians get their day, and the kids don't have to come to school. All of Webster's educators grades K-12 will gather tomorrow, always learning from our vision, and they'll gather during our 3rd annual Teachers Teach Teachers Conference Day. Teachers will be teaching to and learning from each other during this innovative day of professional development. I'm particularly thankful to our district team that has been planning this day for at least a half a year, especially to Melissa Phillips, who's just, it's amazing. Without her, this day doesn't happen. So I look forward to seeing all of our students back on Tuesday, October 10th, I think that is. And hopefully we'll see many of the board members tomorrow at Teachers Teach Teachers. So that ends my report.
Thank you, Carmen. We'll move on to board business. Now, the Individuals with Disability Education Act has established due process procedures when a parent and a school district disagree about the identification, the evaluation, educational placement, or the provision of an appropriate public education for a student with a disability. Such disagreements are often resolved through non-adversarial means such as the Committee on Special Education and/or mediation. But sometimes a more formal method known as an impartial hearing is used to resolve disputes. We recently experienced an impartial hearing, and the board would like to appeal a decision that was rendered by the hearing officer. Therefore, may we have a motion to direct our superintendent to implement this appeal? Thank you. May we have a second? Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, the Monroe County Executive, Cheryl Denoffel, has asked local governments and school districts to come up with a plan to find ways to share government functions and services. And we would like to appoint Brian Freeman as our voting member of this panel. But before we do, Brian, do you have anything to add to this, this particular?
We met a couple times over the summer. It was the initial meetings, and I believe under New York State that we will have these meetings ongoing throughout the year as a way to kind of brainstorm ideas. The initial plan was kind of just to come up with a list of what everybody is doing right now, intermunicipal governments, shared purchasing, piggyback purchasing, allowing sheriff department to fuel at your pumps for schools or fire departments, and just create a kind of a running list of what we do now to submit to the state. But I believe we'll be meeting every year quarterly, I think is what we're going to be attempting to do to look for opportunities to share more services.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Then may we have a motion, please, to appoint Brian as our voting member?
Second.
Jan and then Linda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, actually, October 25th is when the registration opens for our national conference, which is being held on April 7th and 9th. And we have found from past experiences that if you wait, you're not going to get a place to stay. So we're actually asking the board who is interested in going to the national conference. Now, our normal policy was to kind of rotate it, and we had Tammy and Linda go last year, and I actually think it's Jan and Bill would be up this year, but I know, Jan, you've already responded that next year would be better for you. Are you interested, Bill?
I am not.
You are not. That then puts it to Sue and myself. Are you interested?
I'm interested, but I probably wouldn't be able to go.
All right. I am interested, and I probably could go, so I think we have room for one other person, so I don't know if Tammy or Linda is interested.
Is that spring break? Yeah, that's spring break.
That is the end of spring break.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
Thursday.
Can't go?
So sorry. Hi, Mike.
She's fun to travel with. I
You don't know.
may be able to go, but I
right.
don't know
But you have time until to the 25th, so. But if you can, we're going to just let Cindy know, okay? All right. Actually, we should ask Carmen, are you interested in going?
Spring break.
Yep. All right. Let's move on to the New York State School Board resolutions. I did attend the resolution meeting that was held last week in Canandaigua. I don't know if you really want to go through all of them, or if you would like me to highlight some that are of particular interest. It's the board's choice.
You know, I read through all of them, and what I was interested, and maybe it's just because I'm new to this, but there are some that the board is recommending.
Correct.
Right? And then there are some that are not. I
Correct.
read those. But you had a large group come to this decision.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. So I guess, you know, I feel comfortable with that group, is what I'm saying. If you want to just highlight what you think are the highlights, that would be fine for me. I don't know how anyone else feels, but.
I read them all. I agreed pretty much with their decision and the rationale, for the most part.
All right, then I'll just highlight a few.
Okay.
One that Brian might be able to add some to is Resolution Number 9, which supports legislation to permit school districts at their option to be necessary parties to payment in lieu of taxes, which we already do, I think. No, we don't?
We
Aren't
have we have no say in pilot arrangements. It's strictly through Imagine, formerly known as Comida. We sit on the sidelines.
So you'd be in favor of this?
Yes, it would be.
I would think so.
Very beneficial for us to have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
Resolution Number 11 supports fully funding the foundation aid formula. I can't believe anyone.
Brian really wants that one.
Yeah. 2 thumbs up.
Take that one instead of Comida.
Resolution 12 and 13, which is also very similar to the funding aid, is talking about the tax cap. They want meaningful reform to it. In one case, they want to make sure that no district has a negative property tax cap, and the other one would ensure that there is some sustainability to the tax cap. Again, I think there shouldn't be any argument on that one. One that I opposed, I'm probably going to vote no, was Resolution 19, which opposes the property tax cap and calls for its repeal. Now, here's my thinking on this. NYSBA only has so many people that they can advocate. And if you look at at least I think, the political will of the governor, the tax cap is never going to go away. So why spend our time on trying to repeal it when we'd be better off trying to get foundation aid funded fully, or something done with the tax cap to make it more workable? Yeah. So, you know, I just don't see NYSBA putting the efforts into trying to repeal it. It's not going to happen. I may. Another one that I thought was very, very interesting was Resolution 21. It supports all and any proposed changes that could encourage and incentivize New York State school districts to address the health issue of sleep deprivation by implementing a later school start time. I don't think any particular district, at least in Monroe County, can do this alone. And it really has to be a joint effort, and I think this would be a real smart way to start that.
Wasn't there a committee that was charged with looking at that within Section 5?
There have been a couple of schools that have looked at it, and in each case, the cost to that individual district, particularly in relation to transportation, was incredible. And then you have some various other unintended consequences that happen that, you know, they just haven't been worked out. You can't do it as an individual district. I mean, we could, but I don't think the taxpayers would fund the transportation cost.
Yep. Or again, the biggest issue for any district is if you flip younger kids and older kids, because younger kids are up anyway, right? That's the idea. You know, the 6-year-olds have been up since 5 a.m. So let's start their school day at 7:30, and let's start the older kids at 9 o'clock. The issue would be, you know, it's dark out at 7 o'clock at the bus stop for 5 or 6 months out of the school year. Older kids sometimes are home to babysit the younger kids, so what happens in the afternoon? And so districts are like, okay, well, we'll just send all the kids at the same time, 8:30, 8:45. Well, now you nearly double the number of buses and bus drivers that you need. Not so much, the buses are easy. We could buy the buses, right? I mean, again, that would be on the taxpayer. However,
You have a spot picked out where we're
yeah,
going to put them?
and then we have to put them somewhere. Well, that's right. Then we got to hire drivers. So, I mean, and that's the biggest piece. It's just, it's so, yeah, but it's still,
But you're still-
yeah,
then
you're,
you've got
you're
it
still
at the
looking
other
at,
end,
right, you
which
still
is
got
just
the other
so
end,
dark.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Traffic.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, but it's a great idea.
Right.
We all agree that it's great for kids, anywhere from 15 on up. But it's just a matter of how do you do it in a systematic way across the county.
And finally, there was one resolution that I might need, Shelley, your help on this. To protect students' privacy by allowing districts to use locally generated ID numbers for students to be used in all New York State education data collection. My understanding is that the state generates a number, and then that number comes back to us, and then we can transform it to our school numbers. And this is, I guess there are some school districts that just are having a hard time transferring the state number to the student number, and they just wanted to keep it as the school number rather than the state number, and that would throw the state all whacked, you know, they
We do that all the time. I mean, we upload our data regularly, and when we do that, it has to correspond with the state number and our student.
So they're asking for a local number for the state. Can the state handle that?
Yeah, right, yeah. So I don't see why they couldn't, as long as we can.
Of course, the state's probably saying, why can't you handle the state number?
Right.
So that was, the small schools seem to argue that a lot, as opposed to,
Or maybe you should
it's
find out
expensive.
what the issue is when you're at the meeting. I mean, because it, you know, for us, it doesn't
the
seem
issue
like it's
was,
an issue.
many of the small schools did not want to take the time to transfer the state number that was given to the local number.
Okay. So they don't have the software, or who knows?
Whatever.
Yeah.
All right? So other than that, I'll probably vote the way the committees are recommending. All right, now let's move on. A national nonprofit organization known as adoptaclassroom.org has teamed up with the Burlington store to help schools and teachers identified as a Title I school purchase needed supplies. Now, to celebrate the opening of their store at Baytown Plaza, a donation of $10,000 has been offered to Plank North. Our board policy indicates that to accept a donation of this size, there must be board approval. I'm unaware of any reason not to accept this generous donation, and thus, can we have a motion to approve this donation?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we heartily thank Burlington and Adopt a Classroom for their generosity. Brian, our treasurer's report, after a $10,000 donation.
For a specific purpose, so it's not going into the general fund. It's going into a unique account code just for Plank North. Treasurer's report for August. You will notice there is not much action in August as far as our cash flow cycle. August is always our lowest balance month. If you notice that compared to previous months, due to the fact we receive almost next to no revenue in the month of August, but we still have expenses going out the door. For instance, we might not have a large payroll until the teachers come back in September, but we do a significant amount of our materials, supplies, and equipment purchasing in the summer months. So you'll see disbursements are up compared to our revenues. So obviously we're we always monitor that, but just to point out that August is generally our lowest month for our overall balance. But next month, you'll see that go right back up because of tax collection season.
Questions at all from the board? Okay, motion to accept the treasurer's report, please.
So moved.
Second by Jan, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we need to approve a cooperative agreement with the Rochester Area School Health Plan. The reason for this is because the plan is moving from a minimum premium funding agreement to a self-funding agreement. The consortium is attempting to eliminate and reduce the large amount of fees, which, if you went to the information sharing meeting, is over $8 million. We're trying to change the structure and setup of the consortium. Brian, anything to add to that?
Sure. I've included in there from last year, we talked about this almost about 15 months ago, to give the boards of education notice. We were hopeful at the time that it would happen shortly after that. I believe it was last May. But we've been at this process for almost 2 full years now to try to get the state to approve us moving. So what you have before you is the resolution that all the school districts that participate in RASH 2 must approve, because it's an entirely new structure, an entirely new agreement between all the districts together. We finally were able to get the state to approve that agreement and sign off on it, so we are one step closer to hopefully eliminating those taxes from RASH 2 moving forward that are associated with the Affordable Care Act.
Questions at all from the board? Yes.
So now that we're going to be, assuming that's all plays out the way you hope, since we're going to be self-insured, are we going to adopt any, are we going to do anything to help people adopt healthy lifestyles to keep our costs at a minimum?
That would really be more of an Excelis plan design avenue. This is strictly more so a reorganization to offset all the taxes. It's more controlled by New York State, rather than before we had more Excelis input, because if, as claims come in, they fluctuate. So 1 month we could be high, 1 month we could be low. On the high months, Excelis would cover us until we came back. Now, under this system, we have to have enough money in reserve to be able to cover those. So that's one of the major differences. Really, it's the plan design.
Right. Okay.
I guess the deductible
like
plan.
Memberships to health clubs and that kind of thing. Silver sneakers.
There's some of that is buried on there. I'll admit, I don't think we do a good enough job promoting it across the county, that some of those membership things are available through our healthcare plans.
We're getting rid of parking lots, so that people have to walk a really far distance.
Or you could put in more pickleball courts.
More bike racks.
Are there risks, additional risks that come with this self-funding versus not?
The risk would be if you have a really, really bad month, but the state requires our reserve funding to be at such a level that we'll never, we won't be damaged because of it. We just are required to keep more in the bank under this funding compared to the previous setup.
Okay.
And are you predicting that all 17 are going to be in agreement?
Yes. I don't think there's a district that would say no to avoiding over $10 million in taxes that we weren't paying 5 years ago.
Okay. So is this 10 million per district or 10 million
Overall for the
overall
plan.
for the whole plan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's split between the districts.
Yeah,
And since
on a
we're
yearly-
large,
It
would
equates to about 3 to 4% on the rate increases every year.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have one. What is the New York State 332 assessment tax? What is
That's New
that?
York State's tax on us as of currently right now. If we go self-funded, that gets eliminated, which might have something to do with why it took
2 years to get.
2 years to get movement, because they don't want to
Okay.
lose that.
I hadn't heard it. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. May we have a motion, please, to accept this agreement?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, board members, if you would just quickly take a look at the, in the consent agenda, the overnight trip. And I'm not speaking about this particular trip in general. I just want to make sure that we have the ability to make sure that our people who are going on these trips have travel insurance. And I didn't see in the brochure where that was listed, and maybe I just missed it. The other thing I want to make sure that they know is that the superintendent or the board, for any reason, has the ability to cancel this trip, and if so, what is our liability then? And that's a discussion I'd like to have on this.
It does say on the last page, there's global travel protection that's in the cost.
Yeah, but I wasn't sure if that meant.
And then there was the other one, that peace of mind, what's the peace of mind guarantee? Oh, never mind, that means it won't change, never mind.
So Mike, we have tried to communicate over the last 12 to 18 months the importance of travel insurance. And I will check when tomorrow or next week, or when I'll get back from NISBA, to make sure that certainly the trips that normally go out from our LOTE clubs and our science clubs, to make sure that those advisors understand that, you know, the travel insurance really should be baked right in to their overall pricing plan. And I know that Mr. Chrisman over at Thomas, when he brings his students to the Mayan ruins, and I forget in which country he'll be going down to, it might be Mexico or Peru. It's Peru. The travel insurance is a non-negotiable. It's part of that. And because you're right, I mean, we have weather events that we may very well just say, sorry, you know, you can't go out. Or we may have international safety events that may occur, that we decide, you know, it's just we don't feel safe to send our students and our staff and parents as chaperones out to those countries. In terms of liability, I know this came up last year with a different district that had to cancel something at the last minute, and you know, the liability is really on the family. I mean, they have to understand that, you know, once they pay their $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever it's going to be, it's on them. That they need to understand, this is like any other trip. This is like any other family trip that may get canceled. So, but we'll make sure that we really reach out to those advisors to make sure that they're emphasizing those points with their kids and with their families.
Thank you. Anything else for the general good on that? All right, then we'll move that overnight trip back into a consent agenda if there's no objection. All right, so let's move on then to our school liaison reports. Bill, we'll start with you. Anything to report?
On the 18th of September, I was at Plank North and met the PTSA players there and had a wonderful evening with them. Craig Bodensteiner, the building principal, spoke about the opening days and building a culture at Plank North, and it was a great evening. The next meeting for that group will be on the 13th of November.
Thank you. Jan, anything?
I went to the Plum North PTSA meeting on September 18th. They've now switched to Monday nights. That was a Monday. Very nice participation. They had approximately about 30 people there. As Stacy said, Allison, the other central PTSA person, came, and I think that's really nice to have representation from Central there. The two new co-chairs are Jen Countryman and Kansas McDonald. The evening was sort of focused on the themes for the year and the PTSA goals. And like in all schools, October is a really busy month in an elementary school. And the next meeting is Monday, October 16th.
Thank you. Linda?
Plank South, on the 12th of September, there was probably about 35 parents there. And they went through their fall fundraiser, all of the events that will be happening. So there'll be trunk or treat, coming up, and they're also looking for more volunteers for some of their after-school activities, so they had a call out for that in some of their clubs. And the next meeting will be on Tuesday. And they also went to Spry this past week. That was probably the most highly attended middle school PTSA meeting I've ever been to. It was really, really awesome. The PTSA there is changing and having meetings, going to have them once a month now.
Monday nights.
Yes, the next one, and I can't remember the date.
It's this Monday at Panera.
Yes, and then they'll be back in the library. So they're trying to really get more programming into the school. They have their fundraiser for Spirit Wear right now. So it was a great group. They have a lot of new ideas. So it was good.
Thank you. Sue?
Yes, I went to the Schlegel PTSA meeting on September 19th. As always, it's very well attended and very organized. Upcoming events, they have a fall dance and a scarecrow contest on October 13th, a craft fair on November 4th. Their next PTA meeting is November 14th at 7 o'clock, and just as a reminder, they do provide babysitting.
Thank you. Tammy, anything?
I went to DeWitt's PTSA meeting, and they had a family carnival that was planned for the previous Friday. So at this Monday, the following Monday, I'll get to find out how that went. But it's a very good group of people and very committed, and they always seem to have a lot of enthusiasm and volunteers toward what they want to do. So it's a good meeting.
Thank you. At Coffee with the Principal, yesterday, people toured 3 classes at Willink. We saw a technology class where students were working on a project that involved rolling a marble on a device that they built with specific design requirements at the slowest speed possible. Usually you always go fast. This was slow. We then visited a fax class where they were making strawberry parfaits, and we finally went to a Spanish class. I didn't get any.
So you got
Yeah. Afterwards, the principal, Jim Ginley, he asked the parents what they saw in the classrooms that displayed the compassionate, connected, joyfully engaged, and always learning aspects. And that was really interesting to see how the parents answered that. And Mr. Ginley did field questions from the parents, and many were related to security issues related to our Chromebook. And at Clem South, they had a very good turnout. They had a successful kindergarten play date. Their Save Around fundraiser is wrapping up, and there's a family movie night coming up on October 13th, as well as a dance on November 3rd. And Aaron Land, their principal, reported that the building is working on building relationships with their students, and the school has some protected time before they start their academic day where they get to know one another, and this is a time that they reinforce the essential skills and the care attributes, and I thought that was a very interesting concept. And that concludes our school liaison reports, so we'll go into the county reports. Steering committee will be meeting Wednesday. Basically, we'll be looking at continuing our goals and looking at some position papers on various legislative topics. Right, I know that. Legislative committee met yesterday, and again, they were looking at the various position papers that Monroe County will be dealing with. Labor relations is coming up, unless you... Yeah, do you want to report on that one?
Sure. It was all about workplace satisfaction in a challenging and economic time. Hilton School District spoke, and they were talking about how they are one of the top employees in the county, and how they got to be that, and they kind of use that being a top employee to help them attract new employees, and then they have a lot of new initiatives going on, fitness and wellness, but it was a lot of stuff that we do, so so it was good. It was very interesting. So.
Thank you. Bill or Tammy, do you want to do information sharing? That was the SL report, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were just brought up to date on New York's response to the Every Student Succeeds Act, and paperwork has been submitted, and now they're just waiting to hear back from the powers that be in Washington as to whether or not we've done it correctly or not.
It was well attended, too, by the way.
It was, and they reiterated several times how they really tried to reach out to all stakeholders and were impressed with the amount of feedback that they got. So that was encouraging to hear that they were reaching out and working together.
Thank you. Our standing committee reports, audit met this week. We met with Ray Wager. He reviewed our financial executive summary, and we learned that we were to have a very healthy financial situation. We also looked at our correction action plan from our internal control audits. That was a very clean report. One recommendation, however, because of security breaches, is for the district to consider utilizing a dedicated computer terminal to be used exclusively for online transfers. And I don't know if, are we into that?
On Tuesday.
Okay, great. Sue, I know you had policy today?
Actually, we had strategic planning today.
Strategic planning.
Our policy meeting is going to be on November 2nd, and this year we're going to be reviewing the governance and HR policies.
Wasn't there a policy that you were going to mention?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're all keeping track.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then why don't you do strategic plan also?
Yes, we met today and just trying to figure out what we're going to do this year, and we'll just give you a couple of hints.
Just teasers, okay?
Teasers. We're going to give you some teasers, if I can find my paper with my teasers on. Spoilers. We're going to talk about our metrics this year, make sure that they align with our goals, and see if there needs to be any changes and additions, like you talked about, for our readers, making sure our kids are reading at grade level by the beginning of 3rd grade. We're going to be talking about one Webster and wellness, and also, this is the hint, the new schoolhouse. So our first meeting, we're hoping to have our first big meeting in the middle of November, and we're going to open it up to, 30-ish people. Make sure we have a lot of parents and teachers and the regular, the core meeting and the core team, and see where we're going to go. So it'll be fun.
All right.
Be some surprises.
All right, I can't wait.
Yeah. You've been pleased with all of our other recommendations, so I don't anticipate anything less.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Board members, you've had a chance to look at the consent agenda. It includes the recommendation from the superintendent on the minutes of our meetings, on personnel actions, on the recommendations of the Committee on Special Education, as well as the Committee on Preschool Education. There is the health insurance group membership request from 2 individuals, as well as the overnight trip that we talked about previously. May we have a motion, please, to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
In a second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Just pointing out that we have a workshop on October 19th. Thank you, Linda, for knowing that the 10th didn't work very well for me. That 9 and 0 got in the way on the keyboard. And other than that, hopefully we see some people tomorrow at the Teaching Teachers, and also at the Autumn Fanfare. And with that being said, may we have a motion, please, to adjourn?
So moved.
In a second.
Second. All in favor? We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.